Hey everyone, it's Aesah, and welcome to my video for the 15.7 meta report. This is still day 1 of the new patch, so as always, things can change, but based on the early data and patch notes, these are the comps that will be performing well. I'm using the Diamond Plus filter across all regions. Certain comps that cap out higher tend to perform higher in higher elos. For example, Soul Fighter is a very consistent, straightforward comp that does well, but it becomes a little bit weaker the higher up you go, and you can see that represented by the low win rate. Soul Fighter received a pretty big buff at the 6-piece breakpoint. The AD and AP went from 3 to 4, so a 33% buff on that aspect of Soul Fighter. Of course, Soul Fighter also gives the true damage as well as HP. So overall, I'd say it's about like a 10% buff to the 6-piece trait. Very, very, very impactful as you're frequently on that 6-piece throughout stage 4, which is one of the most impactful stages. Along with Soul Fighter buffs, some of the other top performing comps, most notably Veteran Janna, which used to hold the #1 spot here, got a lot of nerfs, so that opens the space up as well. Katarina did not receive that many changes. She received very, very small nerfs to Max Arcana and over 9,000, which are probably still Katarina's best two fruits despite the nerfs. But she didn't get any direct nerfs, nor did Battle Academia or Executioner, so Katarina, already performing really well last patch, shot up to the second place comp here. In addition, Yuumi and Leona were buffed, and you will be using these units in your comp. Very frequently, you're going to be carrying a Yuumi 2 by the end game. Unstoppable was also nerfed on our con, but it's still very, very good. Next up is Kog'Maw. Kog'Maw received a decent sized nerf, about 10% on his damage. That being said, still a really good comp, was very, very good last patch, and a lot of the top comps are nerfed, so yeah, still doing well. Heavyweight, just another possible frontline for Kog'Maw. As a monster with no traits, you can pretty much use any frontline or any backline. Bastion tends to synergize with Kog'Maw a little bit more just because Kog'Maw is a ramping, very strong solo carry. You want your board to live as long as possible, and then the Cog will deal a lot of damage. Whereas for Smolder, let's talk about that real fast. Smolder prefers Juggernaut or Heavyweight because Smolder doesn't really want to just stall out and solo carry the comp. Smolder is really happy with additional damage on the rest of your team. That can come from Darius or Jace, which is really nice when you're re-rolling 3 costs to get some of these side carries to go with Smolder. That being said, you absolutely can use any frontline with any of these monsters. Next up is Yuumi. Yuumi received direct buffs, about 5% damage buff. Leona received a buff as well. And again, with a lot of the top comps being nerfed, Yuumi has went up from B tier to A tier on this patch. Star Guardian has been about the same. Cassante got nerfed, but Poppy got buffed. Other than that, not too many changes here. Just a pretty solid level 8 comp to play. Akali, I would say pretty much the same. Mech units might be slightly more contested on this patch. It's hard to say, given how early it is, but Jarvan and Ryze will be contested by Mighty Mech players. Other than that, this comp has not changed too much. Mighty Mech, speaking of Mighty Mech, is right here. I think the average placement is a little bit skewed here because if we look at the units, this has Yone 80% of the time. And a lot of the times when you're not hitting Yone, the comp that you're actually going to end up in is Sorcerer Karma, which is down here in B tier, but I think both of these comps are kind of skewed and their true average is somewhere in between just because a lot of times when you're angling Karma main carry, playing mech on your board during stage 3, building Karma items, if you hit Yone, you'll end up playing this version. So basically, like if you high roll, of course your average placement is going to be better. And if you don't ever hit a Yone, you are likely to end up in this board, which will drag the placement down since it has a higher percentage of low roll in the data. So always important to keep in mind sampling bias. But Karma herself did get buffed as well as the Sorc trait. So yeah, Karma is doing a little bit better than last patch. For the Mighty Mech version, Yone got some pretty sizable buffs as well. So he becomes a little bit better to itemize. Next up is Wraith. Kale, pretty staple comp that has been in the meta since this entire set. Sometimes it's been really good, sometimes it's been just alright. Right now I'd say it's like decent. Mentor Janna was his strongest comp on the last patch. Kobuko received very big nerfs. This unit was just really overpowered, honestly, as a 2 cost. Cassante received some small nerfs, and Strategist also received a nerf. So overall, this comp is much weaker than on last patch, but still a decent option if you're kind of just hitting a lot of its units. It's closer to Bastion Xayah. For example, on last patch, you wouldn't really be trying to play Xayah as much as you might try to play Veteran Janna. You can kind of treat Janna like Xayah now, where if you have a good spot for it, you can play it, but it's not really something you're going out of your way to hard force, like Janna on the previous patch. This comp is a little bit better on this patch, even though most of these units are unchanged. Again, Leona, as we mentioned earlier, got a small buff. Rageblade and Kraken's Fury both got buffed on this patch, and there's not that many units that take advantage of both of them, whereas Xayah is really flexible in her item build, but ideally you have Rageblade and Kraken's Fury, so both of these items being buffed on Xayah makes this line a little bit stronger. Volibear got some buffs, so you can play Volibear with kind of a Soul Fighter, Edgelord core, like this. I guess it's not even Soul Fighter, it's just with Samira. Sometimes you'll have another Juggernaut to pair with Dr. Mundo, Samira, and Set. And you can also play it with a Star Guardian core. Jinx will pair with Nara for Sniper, Xayah will give Star Guardian, and of course Edgelord to Volibear. And of course Nara is Luchador for Volibear. So you can play it with a Star Guardian or more Edgelord, Samira, Volibear duo carry. Crystal Gambit has gone a bit up. I want to talk about Crystal Gambit Malzahar as well as Ashe here. So let me just filter for both at once. Malzahar did receive some pretty significant nerfs. It was technically just a bug fix, but of course that is equivalent to a nerf. 5 Crystal itself received a very small nerf just to 1 cash out. It's a huge nerf to that 1 cash out, but overall you don't get that cash out that frequently anyway, so 5 Crystal hasn't changed too much. So if you're looking to play this Crystal Gambit line, instead of using Malzahar as your primary, a lot of times, or using Ahri as your primary, which you can see these are not performing that well, you can maybe choose to use Ashe. Again, Rageblade and Kraken were buffed, so Ashe will take advantage of those buffs. That being said, the Crystal line is still not amazing, but you can definitely play it. This is kind of like a Fast 9 board. I don't want to put too much stock in Fast 9 boards. I think they are heavily overplayed on ladder just because they kind of take the least amount of thinking. You can be watching TV for all of stage 2 and just not playing a board. And people think you kind of just econ into Fast 9, gamble a roll down, and see if you hit. This is actually not that reliable for obvious reasons. If you're rolling down even 100 gold at level 9 on 1 or 2 lives, it's pretty possible to just rotate into a high roller and get a bad placement. The way you usually want to play into Fast 9 is be really healthy and have a good early game. The reason is on stage 4, you will normally be sitting on a ton of gold. Fast 9, you're generally going to go 9 on 5-1 or 5-2. So that means on stage 4, you're sitting on 50 to almost 100 gold by the end of the stage, which means you will almost always lose most of your rounds in stage 4. That means you're losing about 40 to 50 HP, maybe even sometimes more in stage 4. So you need to have a very good early game to be able to lose 50 HP and then still come back and win the game. But yeah, Fast 9, you could use a kind of Juggernaut frontline. Juggernaut's nice because you can fit in Lee Sin. You can also use a Bastion frontline as well. Bastion will naturally fit Braum. Juggernaut, you can use Braum, you'll get Luchador with Dr. Mundo, it's less important. Bastion, you can fit Gwen with Sork and Soul Fighter. There's just like, there's benefits to each version. Honestly, a lot of times it will kind of just depend on which one you're naturally, the more units out, more units. So Academia Caitlyn, make sure you're not running into Katarina players. They will loosely contest you. You can play both in the same lobby, honestly. but the cat player might be holding 3 Jaces, for example, which will affect you, and you're both going to be looking for Leona and Yuumi later. This was pretty staple comp throughout most of the set. It's it's in B tier right now. The more monster trainer plus 6 frontline variants. The crew been pretty solidly and around B tier the whole set, plus or minus some, but yes, it's still here. I do want to note that the vertical sniper version was buffed. It does seem to be trending up. I actually looked at this earlier, and this was in C tier, so yeah, it is trending up. We'll see if that overtakes regular crew. I expect it to later in the patch, but we'll kind of see how it goes with the vertical sniper buffs. Let's see, anything else? Yeah, fan service Rakan, not doing as well as Bastion Rakan, which you'll just get Shen with Edgelord for free, whereas here, you really want to be level 8 to fit 6 Protector, plus Yasuo plus Xayah for Edgelord. So it just gets online kind of slower, whereas with the Bastion version, you can get 6 Bastion with Edgelord on level 7. There's pros and cons to both, but typically this fan service version performs a bit worse. Katarina is also very popular, so you're going to be contesting Rakan 3. Mentor Katarina, this is a veteran cat version. You can play this, but it tends to not perform as well as just a regular Battle Academia Katarina. You can play Kaisa reroll. If you do play Kaisa, eventually you're going to want Darius 3 as well. This unit has just not been that strong in the past few patches. It was very meta earlier in the set. Got a nerf, I want to say 2 to 3 patches ago, and hasn't really been performing that well, but if you have a really good spot for it, you absolutely can play Kaisa. Rammus version as well. Did get a buff on this patch, but you can see it's definitely not performing that well still. One last thing I want to point out, well, 2, okay, actually I see 3 comps. Dr. Mundo no longer cleanses Malzahar dots as well as other forms of debuffs, so Mundo 3 a decent bit weaker. Duelist Ashe hasn't really gotten that many changes. Again, the Kraken's Fury and the Rage Blade are better for Ashe. Ashe actually did get a direct buff. Sorry, I actually forgot to mention that earlier when talking about Crystal Gambit. Ashe did get a direct buff. It's nothing crazy. So this comp is still around, but it's not seeming like it's performing amazingly. It is trending up though, so keep an eye on that. And the last one is Duelist Gameplank. This one is kind of more of a meme comp, honestly. There was a Reddit guide posted about it recently, so some people have just been... It's near the end of the set. None of these other comps are really new, right? So some people have just been looking for new stuff to play. You absolutely can try this Duelist Gameplank comp out. It basically relies on the new Fruit Fury break, which sacrifices, you put on your Kale, you don't upgrade her, you make her die as fast as possible, which gives your other unit Gangplank a burst of attack speed, which synergizes with Gather Force to stack up AD, and then with that AD stacked up, you rely on Gangplanks. You have a lot AD and AS from your fruit, and then you just get the mana regen here. And then you need a survivability item, of course, as Gangplank's a melee unit, and they do not get Omnivamp anymore as a baseline. So you can try that out. It doesn't really seem like it's performing that well. In over 100 Pro Circuit games on this patch that I've looked at from scrims, I don't think anyone played it even a single time, so the kind of Pro Circuit players are not believing in it either. That's going to wrap it up on this video for the 15.7 meta report. If you have any comments or questions, let me know in the Discord, and thanks for watching.